Jimmy Hyams, I have a question for you. And this is going to be our poll question that Caleb's going to put up there. The first day at least of Tennessee's national signing period was okay, good, great. Top 10, if you look at the rankings, 10th on the nose, where would you put it?
Can I say very good?
Yeah, so that's kind of between good and great, sure.
I think it was better than good, but I'm hesitant to say great. So I think they did a very nice job. They got some position of need players. You get the quarterback, which may or may not be what you need going forward. We'll see. Is he better than Jake Merklinger? I don't know. But you got a marquee quarterback. It looks like you got a couple good running backs. You got linemen. You got defensive backs. I think they filled a lot of needs, and they got a lot of 4-star players and 1 5-star. Is Sanders signed yet? I don't know.
No, he has not.
Not okay. So you got a lot of 4-star players. I like this class a lot because I think they got players of need that are highly rated, and so I think you can win a lot of ball games with this class.
So back when we covered recruiting, and Jimmy, he mandated you had to be in there at 7 a.m., which was fine, and we worked it pretty hard. I would have argued that you had to have a top 5 class in order to compete with the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world. Now, I don't believe that's the case, and I don't believe that's Josh Heupel's goal even. I'm not saying he would turn down the number 1 class in the nation, but I think he wants to spend more of his efforts and NIL funds in finding good transfers that can help him. And I think that's proven very successful over the past couple of years in particular. So, Jimmy, I'm going to say a great class because of the way that Josh Heupel builds his roster. I think with a top 10, even top 15 class, you can win a national championship. I would have never, ever, ever said that back when you and I worked together or when I worked for other various media outlets. I actually believe this is a great class given the backdrop of college football right now.
It's a great class, provided they do well in the transfer portal, is what you're saying, right?
Yes. And I'm assuming they will based off track record.
Yeah. So there are 3 things that I look at, and obviously these are debatable. But when I look at a recruiting class and when I look at where you are, number 1, in a recruiting class, you need to get a quarterback who could be a marquee quarterback. And not all 5 stars pan out. What was that guy that went to Clemson and then out west, DJ Ungalele?
Why are you disrespecting him and the work that Florida State has done this year? They've been amazing, Jimmy.
I am disrespecting them. I apologize. Not really. So, but you got to get a quarterback that's going to be elite. That's number 1. And maybe Tennessee has done that with McIntyre. The other thing is you need to sign a lot of really good – the players that you sign and bring in, you've got to develop them. You got to develop them. Tennessee's done a poor job, in my opinion, of recruiting and developing offensive linemen and wide receivers under Heupel. Okay, you got to recruit. And then the third thing you got to do in your class, and I'm going to say in your class, is the transfer portal. So if those 3 things pan out, you get the elite quarterback, you develop the players that you sign who have talent, a bunch of 4 stars with talent, and you hit the transfer portal, then you have a chance to compete for a national championship.
So, Jimmy, I agree with all of that, particularly in this era. Now, I want to Dave's got a column up, and it's a great column. It's about recruiting and how things have changed. But there's a quote from Josh Heupel, and dare I say, it's just a more sophisticated version of what Butch Jones once said that we all laughed at.
Oh no!
Wait!
5-star hearts.
Yes, let me get. Yes, it's a 5-star heart quote because he says, "quote You want all the physical attributes, but it's the mental makeup, the passion, and the purpose that they have within them that dictates their climb at this level." That just seems like a much fancier way of saying 5-star hearts, doesn't it?
Oh, Jimmy, I'm not going to go down that. No, not
you, Jimmy. You go first. I've got a strong thought on this.
No, I don't think so. 5-star hearts means we've signed a bunch of kids that aren't very good. We hope they play hard. That's what I got out of 5-Star Hearts.
Bunch of
No,
Rudies.
I don't quite go there with what Josh Heupel said. I get where you're going with that. And by the way, a lot of that is the same philosophy of a basketball coach is doing pretty good, and that's Rick Barnes. If you don't fit his culture and you don't play hard, he don't want you.
Amen.
So I see that as being a little bit different from Butch Jones.
Amen. And here's why I think it's significant. Now, I guess at the end of the day, you would take super talent over culture, but Lane Kiffin tried that, and he ended up recruiting more felons signing more felons than he did all SEC players in his one class at Tennessee. So I actually believe the way that Tennessee has bounced back from losses over the years under Josh Heupel, especially the last 2 years when his culture was in place, I believe he does want guys that are good culture fits. And I understand football is different than basketball. At Princeton, you can have great culture guys, and they can be a great basketball team. You really have to have the Jimmies and Joes in football, or you're just not going to compete. I don't care how great of a guy you are. But I do believe that Josh Heupel would take a 3-star guy over a 4-star guy if the 4-star guy was a prima donna. I do believe that, and I actually think because of the way Tennessee prioritizes things in recruiting, that it is the wise and prudent move.
Well, I'll go to another sport with this talent versus culture thing. Holly Warlick took Diamond DeShields, and that's as talented a player she had in her program. And Diamond DeShields was a coach killer. She was poor. She was bad for this culture. And if you gave Holly Warlick some true serum, she would say the reason she got fired was Diamond DeShields. So you don't want somebody like that in your program. Now, I'll say this about football. You're bringing in 25 players maybe. It's harder to have all 25 fit your culture. In basketball, if you're bringing in 4, roughly, it's easier to dissect and figure out who's going to fit your culture. So you're going to bring in some potential bad apples in football. And the key is to either get them to buy into your culture or encourage them to hit the transfer portal.
Caleb, I think one of those bad apples is playing offensive line for the University of Kentucky. So I think you're able with nowadays with the transfer portal to just bolt those guys.
So what about this too? And I was trolling a little bit with the Butch Jones thing. I do actually agree with you guys. Also, largely because Butch Jones, it's not like he didn't care about stars. Early in his career, when he was getting 5 stars that were not 5-star caliber, he was bragging about it to everybody that would listen. So, it is different. And actually, Jimmy, that's a great point with Diamond DeShields. I also thought Avina Westbrook was another cancer on that team during that time period.
Ended up at Connecticut, didn't she?
She said that Holly Warlick needs to be fired. They fired Holly Warlick, and then she transfers to Connecticut. So I want to ask about, like, because of the level of parity that we've talked about now, that, you know, it's just Georgia and Alabama can't stack up the way they do. Does that actually help culture outweigh talent even more than it used to a certain degree? Because I know Lane Kiffin loaded up with elite talent, but he couldn't get Alabama 2015 talent.
Well, and by the way, that class that was brought in by Lane Kiffin is one of the biggest busts in Tennessee history. It was a top 10 class and named the players that ended up being really good players at Tennessee for more than a year. I think the culture is more important, and in part because even look at Alabama this year, and I'm not going to say they had culture problems, but didn't they lose over 25 players that hit the portal? Didn't they bring in more than 20 players? When you have that kind of influx of talent and those that left your program, it's hard to build a chemistry. It's hard to build the culture. It's hard to get everybody on the same page. A lot of players that come in from the portal are coming in because they want to play and play a lot. And some of them are not. And if they come in, they don't play a lot. I mean, let's take an NFL example. What's that receiver that went to the Ravens, Deontay Johnson? And he wouldn't even go into the Ravens game. So they had to suspend him. Okay. So you're going to get some of that in the transfer portal on the college level. Players not getting the snaps they wanted. And so they become a cancer within the locker room. And so, I do think the culture is more important now than it's ever been, because you're bringing in so many new players every year into your program.
Or you have Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray, excuse me, and he had to have it written into his contract that he would watch film X number of hours a week.
And it wasn't many.
Yeah, it was only like 4. I mean, come on.
We probably watched more film than he did.
Yeah,
just watching games on TV.
Throw me a bone or something. I guess what I'm asking in a roundabout way is, with this type of class out of the high school ranks, and that would be a roundabout top 10 class, can Tennessee win a national championship with this kind of class that is supplemented properly with the transfer portal?
Yes, I do. I think they can. And to me, it goes back to making sure you have an elite quarterback, making sure you hit the portal and fill some needs, and making sure you develop your players. Now, having said all that, I'll go back to this. They still have to do a better job of recruiting and developing receivers. Name the receiver that they've recruited and developed who's all SEC caliber.
Out of high school?
Yeah, out of high school. Recruit him out of high school. The answer is 0.
Right.
Same for offensive linemen. They didn't bring Cooper Mays in. They didn't bring Spraggins in. Those are the 2 best offensive linemen they had. Those were recruited by the previous staff. They've got to do a better job in those 2 areas. And they have recruited some pretty good offensive linemen, at least star-wise. Addison Nichols was a 4-star, and now he's Arkansas center. So they've got to do a better job in those 2 areas. But, yes, I think a top 10 class with an elite quarterback, with player development, with the transfer portal, you can win a national championship.
Well, you might be reading a column about that very topic, because I've taken the note on Off the Hook Sports later today. I've got the time. All right. So what say you, Caleb? Let's close it out on this topic before we move on.
On this specific topic. Yeah. So I agree with you, Jimmy, on the development of talent. It's been a major issue. I've talked about it. There's still not one regular starter you said all SEC for receiver. At the offensive line, name somebody who's actually been a regular starter who was signed by Josh Heupel out of high school. Doesn't exist. They don't have one.
No, it doesn't. Your 2 tackles were transfers. Your Mays and Spraggins, we already mentioned. Your other guard position was either a Texas transfer or a 5th-year senior, Jackson Lampley, or Dane Davis, who was a walk-on. He's in his, 8th year or whatever. So, yeah, you're right.
Here's the other interesting thing that maybe all coaches are doing, but we cover Tennessee the closest, is walk-ons. And I made sure and get this. I got this list from the University of Tennessee to make sure I wasn't missing anyone. Running back Deshaun Bishop, defensive back Will Brooks, kickoff man Josh Turbeville, place kicker Max Gilbert, snapper Matthew Solansky, a couple of others like Tommy Winton played on special teams, backup quarterback Gaston Moore, William Wright as well. So I think it's funny that we even still use the term walk-ons, because with NIL, I can cut you a check. I mean, are they walk-ons technically? Yes, but you can't tell me guys that are playing key roles like, and I didn't mention Will Brooks, but like Will Brooks and Deshaun Bishop, you can't tell me that they're actually stroking a check for their scholarship out of their own pocket.
No, I think that, and I can't say that all of them are covered. Look, I don't know if the deep snapper is covered in NIL. Okay, I don't know that, but I feel confident in telling you that Brooks and Bishop and Gilbert and some others have some NIL money. I don't know what the scholarship amounts to. If you're in state, is it what, 30,000? If you're out of state, it's 40,000 roughly. I don't know if it's completely covered. I would say their expenses are very minimal. So I think that for the most part they're covered. I don't know that 100%. I know some of them are covered 100%. I don't know if all the walk-ons are. You may know that. I do not.
Yeah, well, I don't, but I agree with you. I think that I believe they're probably all covered, but I can't tell you that 100%.